Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If you're looking to get more sales, more customers, master your marketing, and ultimately take control of your retail or e-commerce business, then you're in the right place. I'm Selena Knight, a retail growth strategist and multi-award-winning store owner whose superpower is uncovering exactly what your business requires to move to the next level. I'll provide you with the strategies, the tools, and the insight you need to scale your store. All you need to do is take action. Ready to get started? Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Now, when it comes to my team, I am always looking for people who are better at stuff than I am. Like, I would love to think that I am the smartest person in the room, but the simple fact is, yes, I am smart at some stuff, but I can't be smart at everything. So when I hire my strategy coaches, now, if I can just take a moment to say that a strategy coach that works with me has to have a whole different level of experience to maybe the business coaches that you've been used to. So if you've ever done business coaching, what you might find is you'll turn up and they'll kind of ask you some questions about where do you want to go, and they'll provide encouragement. They might provide some resources, or they might give you some referrals. But realistically, a coach acts as a sounding board. Now, the difference that we have is we have strategic coaches. So if you have a business strategist, what that person is going to do is come into your business, audit your business, put in a strategy for you to do whatever it is that you've hired them to get you to do. And then quite often they will help you implement as well. So what I did was, knowing that people need both. You don't just need a coach most of the time. What you really need is someone to tell you what to do and someone who knows what you need to do. And so when I put together this role of a strategy coach, I was looking for people who had real world experience in retail and e-commerce, who had built businesses quite successfully, had worked with a very wide range of different retail and e-commerce niches. And if you'd done that and you'd done it really well, then that got you a step closer to getting in the door. Now, one of those people who made it through the door and is absolutely nailing it when it comes to helping retail and e-commerce business owners to grow is the one and only Daniel Gibney. Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Sal. That's a very gracious introduction. I often feel like I'm the least smartest person in the room. So there's a mutual feeling there, which is all good.
Well, I mean, we always tell people that if you're hiring someone, generally you want them to be smarter than you, because if they're not smarter than you at the job, then, I mean, it's obviously different horses for different courses, but for the majority of the roles that people are going to be hiring for, if you're hiring for a store manager, for an e-commerce manager, for an email marketer, you don't want them to be capped out by the amount of knowledge that you have, because otherwise what's the point? You could have just done it yourself.
That's right.
So you have had a wealth of experience. So for those of the people out here who haven't had the chance to work with you, I say, that's not fair to them, but let's give them a little bit of a background to how you ended up here today, because you are the successful owner of several businesses as well as being a strategy coach.
Yeah, I guess I sort of started back in, and, don't freak out, I will get through this quite quickly, back in probably the late 90s. But I was, as you can tell, I'm a drummer. This is some of my collection here, but I was buying stuff on eBay from America, bringing it in, selling it. I wanted to make a little bit more money and take a bigger risk. And e-commerce, probably, early 2000s, was just beginning to really sort of take off. And I thought, well, I could import some product, I could sell it, what could I do? And I had a whole lot of ideas. To cut a very long story short, we just had our first child, our daughter Emily. Couldn't find any hearing protection earmuffs for her, which we needed because she wanted to play the drums, watch me play. And I thought, what about earmuffs for kids? That'd be a great idea. And gave it a shot, found a supplier, built the website myself, set up the company myself with the help of a good accountant, and gave it a shot. And 17 years later, still going. We've got offices in the US and the UK and Australia. We have logistics operations there and in Asia. And so, look, that's a very condensed version of of that. That's been something that's been going that whole time. I've been involved with other businesses. Some of you may be aware of a sport called pickleball, which is really taking off, to say the least, in Australia. Yeah. So I'm involved with Pickleball Superstore. We're one of the biggest distributors in the country of pickleball equipment. I have a barbecue business called Fire Slab with my brother, who's a very successful butcher, and that's kind of like a little hobby business on the side as well. And then in addition to that, I also play drums. I call that my weekend job. And I taught drums for about 10 or 15 years while I was building some of these other businesses too. And I still do some of that on the side. And then, I guess everything I've learned in the course of all of those, and I'm still learning, I had the opportunity to join as a strategy coach. As you say, I sort of just told you my story, and it's what you're after, which was very gratifying. Very happy to be on board.
I have to say, I didn't even know some of that. Do you know what? I knew you were a drummer, and I knew you had M's for Kids, the earmuffs. Mm. But for some reason in my head, I never put two and two together. And I always thought you had started that business, and you've never said this. I just assumed that it was because you were doing renovations at home and you needed them for the baby. I don't know why I thought that.
They were helpful for that. They were absolutely helpful for that. I think that the thing was I had, I went to an e-commerce seminar with a friend of mine who was already doing online fashion, men's fashion. And they basically, this seminar, you bought a website in a box, basically. And they were really pushing the idea of drop shipping, which is very big in the sort of the continental United States, but it wasn't really big in Australia. But I rang my wife and said, look, I've got the opportunity to buy this website license. I just feel like I should do it. She goes, what are you going to sell? I said, I have no idea. But once I figure it out, this gives me the tools to build the website and get set up. And to her credit, she trusted me. And I think we used the last little bit of baby bonus money that we had, because that was a thing back then. And I bought the license, and then for 3-4 months sat there, what am I going to do? And I looked at music accessories and drum accessories and things like that. And in the end, I still remember the day I was sitting there and I just said to my wife, we were both watching TV, and I just turned to her and said, why don't you have kids' earmuffs? And she'd heard every idea under the sun by this point. So she didn't even look at me.
Whatever.
She was like, yeah, that's right. She goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, Emily's going to need some. She wants to hit the drums and watch me play. And you could use them at motor racing. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, okay, this could work. That was 2007, early 2007, and I had it launched by the end of the year.
Oh, you and I think we were very much in the same headspace. Didn't know each other, different parts of Australia.
That's right. Divergent paths have crossed.
Divergent paths, completely different things, but I was about the same time. And it was funny. I was just on a call with Shopify today, and I was talking about my first ever POS was actually the back end of an Ozcommerce website. And he was like, well, that dates you.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, just mention Domain Central or Aussie Mail or something like that.
Yeah, Aussie Mail. Yep. And Flash, let's be honest, you would know if you didn't know what Flash was. And I remember the deprecation of Flash and how we all had to, change up our websites. And I mean, building a website these days is so much easier. You whack a Shopify template in, you drop some pictures in, and it's ready to go.
Oh, it's incredible. It's so much easier, and you can make it complicated if you want, but you don't need to. So much of it is just set and forget, drag and drop, and you're off and racing. So I envy some people who are starting at this point.
Oh, me too. I look back now, and this prehistorically dates both of us, but I look back now at the things that we used to write down in an exercise book, because we didn't have a diary big enough. So we used to have an exercise book that sat under the counter, and you would write down the day and everything that people had to do. So, for example, it might say, call Vicky about the cloth nappies to make sure everything's going okay. And it would just be all these call such and such, call such and such, call such and such, just to make sure everything was okay. Because like back in the day, I'm thinking that we maybe had MailChimp. I actually don't remember how we used to send. Well, we certainly didn't send automated emails right back at the beginning.
No.
And I think I remember working out, we used to record these videos in store of how to use products like baby carriers. And then no YouTube back then. I'm pretty sure Ed must have showed me a way to embed them in secret pages of the website, because back then having video on a website slowed everything down.
It was huge.
And we used to send these messages that were like, here's the link to the video that you need to watch. And it would be like, send such and such the video number 2. And now you're just like, oh my gosh, like press the button, personalized emails, sending, segmentation, A/B testing. Like life is so much easier now. You kids today don't know how easy you got it.
I know. And I'll tell you what, I use that phrase far too often as well in all areas of life, but particularly in e-commerce as well.
All right. So what I wanted to talk to you today about was, I remember when you first started and you were a little bit daunted, forgive me, feel free to jump in and correct me, but you were a little bit daunted about the fact that you had to, as a team, we provide bespoke, customized, personalized, strategic advice for each business. And you were kind of like that feels like it's going to be really, really difficult. And fast forward, I think it was about 4 weeks in, and you're like, oh my gosh, everyone has the same problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember saying to you, you will find it's like the same half a dozen things that every person needs to, that they're obstacles that most businesses need to conquer first. Yes, we might go on to marketing or KPIs or leadership or whatever, but realistically, they're this handful of obstacles or constraints in a business that I'm going to say 99% of people that we work with come up against. And once they can crack through those, they see results really, really quickly. So I would love to hear from you, from the skeptic who thought that all these businesses were going to come with different problems. What are the big things that you see that, and this is businesses from 6 figures right through to high 7 figures. They're the kinds of people that we're working with that are getting the personalized advice from you and the team and the experts and me. So, and I do laugh now that you have so many niches under your belt, from fabric to clothing to pet food. Like the list goes on.
Yeah. I'm learning a lot as well as teaching a lot. So it's good.
I think you were going to be the fabric store aficionado.
I feel that way. I do feel that way. Yeah. All
right. So let's jump in. What do you think is probably the number one thing that you see?
The biggest thing is probably just understanding, before that, having a grasp of numbers and figures and then understanding how to interpret them. And there are some people that are very good in terms of they have all the numbers in terms of this is our website sales versus our in-store sales and all these sorts of things. They have them recorded, but they don't really know, what do I do with this? How does this help me with order projections and forecasting? And how do I figure out my tax and all those kind of things? But then there are also some other people that just have no idea. And we'll get to the end of the year and go, I've done this much in sales. And I was like, okay, so what are your sales channels? Where did it come from? I don't know. We just sold it. And I envy that because, I'm dealing with a couple of people at the moment that are in that position that are very profitable, which is great. But I think it's not necessarily because people can't understand them or won't be able to understand them. There's just this intimidation around numbers and around finance, I think, and not just necessarily just to do with money, but to do with inventory and stock quantity and all these sorts of things. So I think a lot of people are just a bit scared to jump in and ask questions, or I'll just let the accountant handle that and understand that. And they can just tell me what to do. And I'm a huge fan of good financial advice. There's no doubt about that. But I think really a lot of people are just unnecessarily intimidated, I think, by figures and by numbers. And you don't have to be a maths genius. You don't have to have every last cent worked out and accounted for, but you need to have a grasp of the health of your business. If you could have your personal health on a dashboard with, your heart rate and your cholesterol and your blood pressure and all these sorts of things, you'd want to know. And if that spikes, I need to fix that. How do I fix it? If that's gone down, how do I fix it? A business is exactly the same. You don't have to understand how to explain every little thing, but you need to be able to look at your numbers and get a good idea of where you're at any given time. And so access the numbers. Again, talking about, people have no idea how hard it was. Now, all accounting's online. You can access it 24/7. It's great.
I know. I remember going to the accountant, at the end of each quarter with the shoebox and the big folder of receipts and things like that, and spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like you, I am a firm believer of not leaving your accounting and bookkeeping till the end of the quarter, because by the end of the quarter, it is too late to make any changes. Like you need to be looking at, you need to be looking at this stuff, I think, almost on a daily basis, but at least on a weekly basis, because if you get 2 weeks into the month, and let's just say you've got a goal of $100,000 in the month, and at week 2, you're only at 20, you got to, to put an Australian saying in there, you got to pull your finger out and do something to make changes. You can't whatever you're doing isn't working. If you're supposed to be at 50 and you're only at 20, what are you going to do? And to me, this is one of the, I guess, the benefits of being an independent retailer and not being part of a chain or a franchise is that you can react really, really quickly. Your big box retailers, if they're having a bad month, they just can't go on sale. It doesn't work like that. They can't just call up a supplier and run a promotion at the drop of a hat. All of those things are planned quarters, if not a year in advance. So their ability to adapt to the market is really slow. It's like trying to move a cruise ship, whereas the people listening, it's like, you can make a call today, you can make a call tomorrow, and you can implement something. As long as you've got systems in place, you can implement something to make changes.
Yeah, and the ability to be agile as a small business, or even not necessarily a small business, but a business that's doing quite well. How do you grow and scale and get bigger, but maintain that agility, that ability to quickly move and quickly pivot? And of course, a recent example of this was COVID. There were some businesses that I was amazed. I think the statistic was something like 70 or 80% of businesses in Australia didn't have an e-commerce website when COVID hit, which, as someone that had an e-commerce site for 13 years by that point, I was absolutely staggered.
I'm with you. I
couldn't believe it.
And it's so easy. Like literally, if you have a POS, I don't know if it is a monetary thing, like they didn't want to spend the money or they didn't want to upload the pictures. But I don't know, being in the industry, it hurts my brain to think, one, how much money were you losing? And two, how many people didn't even know that you exist?
Yeah, I think it was a necessity thing too. Look, there are businesses I know now that have a website, but it's very outdated because they don't need it, and business is okay without it. They just keep going. And I think there were plenty of businesses that had no e-commerce or very little, but it didn't matter because they had their customer base and they had, their usual sales channels and their usual events. But once all those got shut down, they had to go, we have to find somewhere else. And they turned to e-commerce. And the businesses that responded the quickest were usually the ones that didn't have to tell 300 staff how to use the website and get head office permission and get financial approval. It was just I've got to find a contractor. We've only got 50, 100, 150 products as opposed to 50,000. Quick, let's get something online. And so that ability to be agile is very, very important. But even, what I was saying about numbers too, a lot of what I talk about and demonstrate, I'm talking from experience, usually where I've got it wrong and got myself through it and fixed it and worked it out. I remember the first 2 years I operated M's for Kids, we ran at a loss because we were just spending so much on development and research and buying products. And I remember, I think it was year 3, around about mid-May, that I looked at the rudimentary figures I had and went, I'm going to make a profit this year, which is great. But then, of course, I'm going to get a tax bill.
I'm going to pay tax.
Wow, hang on a second. So I know.
Oh, crap.
I was scrambling for deductions, digging through the shoebox, and I couldn't avoid it. And I still remember the moment my accountant used to laugh about it years afterwards when I got like a 5-figure tax bill and had no money available to pay it. And he said, I honestly thought I was going to have to catch you as you fell off your chair because I was just in shock. But, I talked to the ATO, we figured it out, I got it done. But ever since then, you still get the odd shock and the odd fright. But ever since then, I've got to know my numbers. I can go through my profit and loss and explain everything, not down to the cent. And I've got to check with my accountant on a couple of things. But it just gives you peace of mind and it gives you a sense of control and a sense of, less panic, I guess, to look at the numbers. Now, you may not always like what you see. You may need to be at 50 grand for the month and you're only at 20. Or you may have a small loss, or you might have spent too much there. But it's true that in so many areas and in your finances, knowledge is power. And if you know about it, you can plan to fix it. If you don't know about it, you're going to get a rude shock eventually because it will catch up with you, just like the tax office.
Yeah, I remember
it'll find you out.
I remember my first year when the accountant was trying to tell me I had to do stock take. And I was like, I know what's in there. And they're like, no, you actually legally have to do stock take because if you have more stock than you started with, we tax you on that. And I remember, I'm like, I remember saying, I get a refund back for that. And she's like, no, dear. No.
Wishing that it's
yeah. She's like, no, you have to pay tax on that. And I remember saying to her, but how can I pay tax on something I haven't sold? And it's an asset. You pay tax on assets. And, I kind of joke about the fact I failed accounting twice, but then I'm such a penny pincher. Like, how did I not know this? But the accounting I learned at university didn't talk about that. Like, it didn't talk about running a business and things like assets and inventory. It was like, here's money coming in and here's money going out. And it I don't know. None of that translated to having a business. And then when I had a business, I remember thinking, oh my God, it's just money. Like, why didn't someone say that to me? It's just money. Just like money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how numbers, whatever, when you think of cash, it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to get serious now. A friend of mine runs a very large supplements company, and him and I laughed because we did business principles at school, as it was called then, in year 11 and 12. And our poor teacher, shout out to Mrs. Bowden if you're watching, for putting up with us. But we would sort of mess around all term and make jokes and just be a bit not serious, but they would always do well on the exams. I don't know how. But again, it was like, okay, here's your ledger, and here's your profit, and here's your loss, and here's inventory. And I remember back then going, oh, okay, I just did enough to get through the exam. And you know, anyone who knows me knows I actually left school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went and did a Bachelor of Business and quit after 6 months because I thought, oh, business is awful. I'll never want to do business. So I really was not set up to end up here, but this is where I am. But it is funny how when you're involved and it's money and it's your money, my goodness, you get serious about it pretty quick.
Oh, yes. I did a Bachelor of Business as well, but not until a little bit later. I know, just if we could just talk about money just for another couple of minutes. I know that you were very kind to do a session for our 5Xs the other day. We're walking through what does a profit and loss look like? What are the things that we're looking for? Because we're not financial advisors. We are literally just looking for the patterns of, that number doesn't seem right. Why is that number a bit high? Like, from the experience we've got, things are not necessarily looking like they're supposed to. And sometimes we find quite a lot of money just because people have put things in the wrong places. And all of a sudden it's like, oh. But what I wanted to ask you is, you work with a lot of people and a lot of women, and the reaction to talking about money can literally go from crying and tears to a lot of confidence around money. But I'm guessing most people kind of end up in the middle. They're kind of doing a lot of smiling and nodding and hoping that Daniel doesn't realize I don't know what I'm talking about. How do you empower people to be okay with money?
I think most people, in fact, I'd almost say all that I've worked with, they actually know more than they think, or they've got better instincts than they realize, or they're doing better than they think. And so I often say to a lot of people, look, okay, this isn't great, and okay, that's, there's a bit of a mess there, or it's a bit of an issue we need to fix, but look how well you're doing here, here, and here. I've never worked with anybody in business that was a complete and utter basket case and was doing nothing right, because chances are the business wouldn't be functioning. So I think more often than not, it's actually encouraging them, and it's all good if you don't know some things. Welcome to my life, like there's always something to learn. There's always something to get better at. So you got to focus on what you do know, what you are good at, what your strengths are. And then when it comes to money, it's actually quite easy to get a decent amount of knowledge fairly quickly. And going through the profit and loss like we did the other day on that call, and I've done that directly with a number of clients, is just go through line by line, explaining what this is, and this then relates to that, and this is what this means, and if this goes up, then this needs to go down. And 99.9% of the time you get to the end of the call and people go, oh, wow. Like, oh, is that all? That's almost their response. And I think there's this fear of, I didn't study accounting, or I didn't do business at university, or this is my first business. A lot of it is quite basic. You buy something, you sell it for more, you make money. What does it cost you to do the selling? That's really what it comes down to in a nutshell if we're talking about an inventory-based or a goods-based business. And so it really is just slowly expanding that out, answering any questions along the way, or any uncertainty that's there. But I think really it's a case of demystifying money, demystifying profit and loss, and a lot of those terms that we hear thrown around, sometimes you just use a different word. Okay, it's not inventory, it's stock, or something like that. And like you said, it's not money, it's cash. It's aged inventory. It's not just old stock. It's money sitting on the shelf. And it's amazing how that can make people go, oh, and they suddenly realize I've got to clear that, or I've got to sell that. So I think demystifying it is a massive part of it for sure.
I love that. I have to say, as I look around, you can't see, but as I look around my office at the literally dozens of boxes that are sitting beside me outside of the view of the camera, that I can completely appreciate I know one of the things that you work with people to do when you first start working is once you go through the money is you find all the old inventory and, we find a way to move as much of that as we can. But it is not easy. It is like moving house after 20 years, which is what I'm doing. And it gets so hard to pick up a box and go, do I need this? But I paid for it. Could somebody else use it? Like, do I want to let this go? Do I just throw it? Like the like internal dilemma that you go through as to make a decision whether you keep something or whether it goes is quite difficult. And I know we've had quite a few people who come on who've shared their stories about running a big promotion, and they've said it's like they've been in tears as they do it. And I can understand that, but having just lived that and literally living it as we speak, I have 100% empathy for them, being able to take control. Like, so many people know what they have to do, but it's the taking action that is hard. And
it
is that, I know I have to get rid of this stock, but I don't want to make a decision to sell it at a loss or, give it away as a gift with purchase or whatever, even though it's costing me money. And even though I could end up benefiting if it goes, it is that, like, we are so adverse to loss that we overlook what can happen, the good things that can happen. So I guess my next question for you will go kind of in that vein, which is sometimes it's really difficult to get people to shift their mindset from a lack mentality. Like, I will lose money on that. Or if I hire someone, I have to, that's money I'm going to lose. What are the areas that you find are the biggest obstacles when it comes to changing that mindset into, if I spend money on marketing, it's an investment. If I spend money on people, it's an investment?
I think it really, there's a couple of things. First of all, I'll say to people, look, if I could give you $20,000 right now, what would you do with it? Oh my gosh, I'd do this and I pay for this and I get this. And I go, well, see that number there? That's $20,000. And if you can sell that, I don't see if you sell everything at half price, that's $20,000. And the shock of, oh yeah, you're right. I think it's tangible things when you've got something in front of you and you go, right, this cost me this much, I could sell it for this much. That's great. But then if I got money for that and spent it on marketing or I spent it on something else, but I can't see that. I can see this. And so it's just human nature. If you've got something, it's tangible, it's here, I've got it now, as opposed to something down the track or something down the line. So that's usually a really great exercise. No, sort of lead them into that almost, I don't want to say that trap, but ask them that question. Hey, I'll give you $20,000. What do you need to do? And there's always a list. Oh my gosh, I need this, got to pay this off, I've got to pay this down. And then you just redirect them and go, well, you've actually got that money. You've actually got more than that money. But it's sitting right there. And, you could have had that $20,000 3 months ago. Sometimes it's as simple as, oh, right, okay. And then they sort of, dip their toe in the water and sell the first little bit and it actually sells and they get that money in and they go, oh, I'm going to do it again and do it again. And like so many things. I remember I had an issue with my UK company about 5 or 6 years ago. We noticed an issue with our VAT, like our BAS return. And a whole lot of VAT hadn't been claimed or we hadn't claimed it. We paid it, we hadn't claimed it. And once I realized that, it was literally not looking for buried treasure. I'm looking through thousands of lines of spreadsheets going, oh, there's another £100. There's another £200. It was incredible. And this money was just building up. It's the same thing. If you look at inventory, you got $50,000 worth of inventory on the stock. And to some people, that might sound ridiculous. I've dealt with clients that have got 300 or 400% more than that sitting on the shelf. And suddenly they sell $5,000. Oh, that's great. I'm going to sell another $5,000. Oh my gosh, that's $10,000. Oh, and it's this snowball effect. But it's the first kind of step to go, okay, I've got to jump to that. The hard part is, and look, I've struggled with this. I've got a really great marketing manager who's pushed me a lot, but we would do baby expos and I would know that I pay for the booth and the staff and everything else. And I pay this much money. And at the end of the weekend, we sold this much, so I made this much. And I like that. Marketing in particular, Google ads and Facebook ads, social media marketing, it's easier and it's much more accurate to track spend and return, investment and return these days. But there is still an element of marketing that you just don't know. And that's where I think it comes down to risk as well. And for some people, there's the risk of, that's the other the other piece of the puzzle is how much of a risk appetite do they have? They've started their own business. They've got some. They must have some appetite for risk. But then it's a case of, well, are you prepared to risk losing money on that to get that money in and then to take that money and spend it on something else and risk spending it on that, like marketing? But then the returns are huge. The risk reward thing is there's a definite reward. One thing that I see with some businesses that is quite sad is they cut their marketing spend to save money. And yes, okay, they're spending less, but then they're telling less people about themselves and the products they have and where they are. And so what happens? Less people know, less people buy, sales go down. Oh my gosh, we're selling less, we're losing money. I'm going to cut marketing even more. And they end up in this downward spiral. You cut marketing, your sales drop. So you cut marketing, so your sales drop. And sometimes, I come in and they've been doing this for six to 12 months. So they're spending nothing on marketing, but they're getting no sales. And that can be a challenge to go, you know what? Again, it's just the language, okay? No one's buying from you, not because your products are terrible, not because your service is awful, but no one knows you're here.
No one knows you.
No one knows you've got this. That's right. And so how are you going to tell people, oh, we can try this and try that? Okay, but that might tell 5 people or 10 people because you haven't got that many social media followers. But what if you could spend money here and let 1,000 people know really quickly? What if you could spend some money on this event? And it can be hard. And I've been there. I've been there when business is tough and because you're throwing money into something that is not a guaranteed return. Mm-hmm. You spend $50 on something and it sells for $150. That's as close to a guaranteed return as you're going to get in business. Whereas if you spend that $50 on digital advertising, you could get $500 worth of sales, or if you don't do it right, you can get nothing. So there's a risk. So it's pushing people to just grow their risk appetite slowly but surely to get themselves back out of that hole they've fallen into as well.
And then, that falls into a whole other category of having people who are smarter than you too, doesn't it? It's like you have
absolutely. You
have a knowledge debt, essentially. Like if you don't know how to run ads, your chances of it going wrong are much higher. But the time to learn to do that is an opportunity cost of doing something else that could have made your business money. So it is trying to explain all of that. All right. So you and I can talk forever. But let me just quickly recap what we've talked about so far. So one was really understanding money and being confident that the numbers aren't scary. Like numbers hold no power when you know what they mean. And we talked a bit about mindset. We kind of fell down the rabbit hole of marketing. But what are the other things that you see? Like what are the biggest obstacles that you tackle right in those, say, first 3 months?
I think there's definitely the money aspect of things. And I think too, it really is just that people are risk averse. And I honestly think this has become particularly prevalent in the past 4 or 5 years because of uncertainty. And look, my businesses, I have to predict. I have to try and project. We all do. But my gosh, I can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, the way the world's going sometimes. And COVID, I think, really gave everybody a fright because, there was ups and downs and there was uncertainty and unrest, but suddenly the whole world literally got turned inside out, upside down and everything else. And I still think there's a bit of a hangover from that where people are, because they know it's possible, because they know it can happen. Now, yes, that was a once in 100-year event. We're only 4 or 5 years out of it now. So it's probably not going to happen again soon. But I think there's a bit of tension and uncertainty there. And there's always tension and uncertainty in business. But I think as someone that obviously I'm on the outside looking in. And so I sort of come in and say, well, look, okay, yes, you've had this struggle and you've had this problem. But if you just push a little bit here and if you take a bit more of a risk there and if you take a chance on that, there's actually heaps of upside. And it's trying to, I guess, get people out of that. Sometimes we look so busy looking down, we don't actually look up and see what the potential and see the opportunities because we're looking at the one issue or the 2 or 3 issues within our own little ecosystem. And so for me, I spend a lot of time, I feel like, just trying to lift people's chins up. Just lift your head up, in terms of being encouraged and you're doing better than you think. But look at that potential over there. Look at that opportunity over there. I had a chat with a client recently who, is doing okay, but not doing great. But they don't even have an e-commerce website yet. And I said, my gosh, look at the numbers you're doing.
If you're doing this
and you're not even online. I was like, there was so much upside here. Okay, yes, you're going to have to spend money on the website. And yes, you're going to have to spend time on it. And you're going to have to figure out shipping. But my gosh, there is so much potential for you here. And it was just trying to encourage them that it's going to cost you money. It's going to be a risk. But let's face it, e-commerce in this day and age is so prevalent and well known. It's not that much of a risk. It's just trying to get them to get out of their own sort of funk and their own, I guess, we get stuck in this, just this mindset. And again, I've been there. It's very, very easy to do and it's very hard to get out of it. So my job as a coach is not only to get in and build the website and to do all the marketing and do all the work, but I've done it before. And to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to be right here with you. I'm going to tell you how to do it. You've got to do it. But it's like any coach, any sport. He's not out there on the field. She's not out there shooting hoops. They're sitting back in the dressing room. They tell the players, go and do this. And if the players execute it, it should work. And that's why successful coaches are so successful, because they can get those results. And so more often than not, it's just about standing back and going, okay, just come back with me and take a wider view of where you're at here. And yes, there are issues, but there's a lot of potential. How do we deal with both? How do we achieve the potential? How do we fix the issues and just get you to a place where you're more confident and you're willing to take a bit more risk? Because you take a risk, it works. You take another risk. That's how we grow. That's how we get bigger as people and as businesses as well.
How difficult do you find it to get people to think bigger?
Yeah, it can be very difficult. And I think this is something that just in life, I am still trying to get my head around. I'm the kind of person that always wants to do something bigger, wants to, I in some ways, take a bigger risk. I don't have a huge risk appetite, but I want to be better. I want to get better. I want to try new things. And there are people that are just happy to stay where they are and are happy to just like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I don't want to grow. Now, I'm happy to say none of those people seem to end up in our program, which is good. So you get a lot of people that I want to grow, but I just don't know how. I'm a little bit scared. And it really is just a case of, I think rather than, because you can paint too big a picture sometimes, you've got to kind of just push them forward a little bit, just nudge them. And sometimes it takes weeks or months of you just got to challenge them on one thing. And they get that one thing right, then you challenge them on the next thing. And it's personality based, it's situational, it depends on who you're dealing with. For some people, it can be, my gosh, you can double your turnover in 12 months, let's go. Whereas for others, it's okay, let's just try this. Let's just get this done. And they get it and it works, they get a bit more confident. And, okay, let's push a little bit further. They get that right, they get a little more confidence. So everybody's different. Every business is different. Every business owner is different. Some people are willing to just take the leap. And some people that, I've got one client in particular that just says, just tell me what to do. Yell at me if you have to, and I'll do it, and I'm able to go, okay, you need to do this, fix this, change this, and then they do it and it works. And so what do? Great. What's next? Whereas for other people, it's just try this, and you've got to be patient. You've got to sort of nudge them along and they get it. And you've almost got to, without being condescending, you've almost got to go, you see, great. A, you could do it. B, it worked. Let's try the next thing. That snowball effect. And it just keeps going. So it's just a patience thing. And it's just an understanding too. I forget that I was the guy at the kitchen table 15, 20 years ago, sending one email or waiting for my first order, so I've been there. And so I've got to remember, like so many things, you learn from your experience. And I'm trying to draw on that to sort of encourage people to go on the journey that I've been on, that we've all been on and are still on.
I love that. And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head of why I think our clients do so well, is because every person gets something individualized. Like the people who need a little bit more hand-holding get a little bit more hand-holding. The people who need just tell me what to do is okay, great. I love getting on these calls because I can give you 3 things and I know that on the next call it's done. And, not to say that either are more successful than the other. It's just that ability. And I think this is a great skill that you and the other strategy coaches have, is this ability to empathize when needed, but also be a bit of a butt kicker when needed, and sometimes do a mixture of the both. And I think it makes my heart sing to hear the results that people get when the advice that they get is personalized to them and it's not just generic advice. Because I cringe every time I I was in a business Facebook group the other day, and someone asked the question, and there's so much, well, I'm not doing this, but here's what I would do. And it's like, you just said, you're not doing it. your advice means
why
nothing.
would someone else?
Why would you even bother to reply? And so this is much noise.
That's a big challenge. Yeah, and sorry, just to jump in there, a big challenge as well is the fact that there's a lot of bad advice out there. There's a lot of, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of bad agencies. There's a lot of bad businesses, and if you have one bad experience with a business in a particular field, that could be enough to put you off for good or for a very long time. And look, unfortunately, digital marketing and e-commerce is still very much the Wild West in terms of regulation and these kind of things. And so that can be a real challenge for people who've tried a digital marketing agency and it didn't go very well, or they got some results but not enough. They were promised the earth and didn't get that. And so they can come in a little bit scarred, a little bit shell-shocked. And it's then a case of going, look, I'm not going to sit here and give you a bunch of theories. Everything I'm telling you to do, I've done. Every risk you've taken, I've taken that and more. And I've stuffed it up and then fixed it. I'll just help you get to the second stage. I won't make you stuff it up because I learned from that. Let my mistakes save you time and money. And it's, it's like so many agencies. The thing I love about what we do with the Retail Academy is that we, it's still, I wouldn't say bespoke. It is bespoke. It's tailored to you. It's not a case of, right, here's just do this, do that, and see you later. It's okay. What does your profit and loss say? What are your figures from last month? What figures do you want to get to? We apply principles, but it's a case of, well, here's some material that we have, and here's a resource that we have, but here's also the experience of a person who's done it. And I think that combination is what makes it such a unique thing.
Mm-hmm. You touched on something there. You didn't say the letters, but you kind of hinted. And I know one of the things that you do when we work with clients who have agencies or even team members is implementing KPIs or targets. So if you have only just joined the podcast, here are 3 letters that I will say probably every single episode, which is KPI. A KPI is a key performance indicator. It tells you whether someone or something is doing their job to the point where you are happy with the results. And for an agency, I think one of the things that we are able to do is look at quite often the very flimsy reports that they get back from some agencies and go, this is not the information you need to know. Here's the information that you need to know. Go back and ask them for this information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, correct. And I've written emails and said, just send them this.
Just send them this.
And again, you don't need to know necessarily what all this terminology means. We'll certainly explain it and talk through it with you, but it's probably just a really good way to keep a lot of these other external agencies accountable. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that go to an agency and say, here's how much money I have, here's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And it can very much be a cookie cutter set and forget, give us your money, off you go. And this business owner is left going, I just spent $10,000 and what did I actually get for it? But they have no way of keeping that agency accountable. I worked with a digital marketing agency a few years ago and they did a good job eventually. But as my marketing manager said, she said, they don't know what they're in for. They don't know who they're dealing with. And I've had it with logistics companies too. I've been doing international logistics for 17 years. So I was working with a third-party logistics company and was just line by line picking up all these errors. And my marketing manager goes, I feel sorry for these guys. They don't know who they're dealing with. But as soon as I pointed these things out, sorry, we'll fix that, we'll change that. Just because I knew what I was talking about and I was able to pick up on things and save myself money. The idea as a coach is exactly the same thing, but I'm saving the client money. If you need to ask them this, they need to tell you that. And don't let them say no. Don't let them say they don't have access to that information. They do.
They do. They just
need to ask. You just need to ask them for it. That's right. And so it's equipping people. Again, what I'm saying to the client, you go and do all the marketing, but it's here. Ask some informed questions, and the answers will tell you this, and you can use those answers to achieve this. And that's always a good feeling when we sort of empower people to do that too.
Yeah. And KPIs, even around team members, is that something that you find people get their back up a little bit about? The idea of putting targets on their team. I know for many of the people that I work with is like, but then I feel like everybody's going to reject that and they're going to stop working. And then if we don't hit targets, they're going to worry that they're going to be fired. What do you see?
I think a good owner, a good manager, a good boss, some people really respond to that and rise to the challenge. And I'm a big believer, this is just a personal thing, but I like to try and incentivize as much as I can. And so I think, you have targets and you have KPIs, but I think there's a way you can make it not this draconian, heavy-handed, you must do this sort of thing. I think you just go the other way. You want that target hit, you want that indicator reached, but the idea is that you motivate to get there, and you motivate with reward, with excitement, rather than out of fear or punishment. I've had situations where if we sell this much, the whole office gets lunch, or we all go out to dinner, or, for me, when I first started M's for Kids, if we hit a certain monthly target, our family would go out for dinner, and I look at that monthly target now and I laugh because we now achieve that monthly target. We now get there in about 4 days, 5 days. But back then, and it was something, and so I think I would say not just for your staff, but for yourself as well. Reward yourself with something. Set yourself a goal, make it achievable. And I think that's the other thing. I work with some clients where it's like, okay, here's the minimum. But if we get to this, I'm going to give them this sort of reward. If we get to that, oh my gosh, I'm going to give them this sort of reward. And everybody wins because the staff member, the team member feels they've achieved something and they get a tangible benefit or bonus for it. But the business wins too. And you as the business owner win because, my gosh, I never thought we'd sell that much, but my staff are motivated and look at what we've achieved. And I've seen that over and over again. And I think also, again, it's a personal approach, but as a business owner, there's KPIs, but I think also just looking after your staff and just rewarding them when they're not expecting it. Yeah. I've had situations, we've had the biggest month we've ever had. There wasn't a KPI in place in terms of if we reach this, but I just bought them a reward anyway, or given them a gift voucher and said, hey, look, that was our biggest month. Thanks so much. And you'd be amazed how it motivates them to work harder, but it also not buys, but it sort of, brings some loyalty from your staff as well. You're looking after them. You're making sure they're doing well. You're rewarding them when they work hard. They then want to continue to work hard, which means the business succeeds, which means they succeed. It's cyclical, but there is definitely having KPIs is absolutely a good idea and something to work towards. But I think how you implement them, there's the very draconian, heavy-handed way, which I don't recommend. Have them in place, but make them a bit less, don't motivate out of fear, motivate out of a sense of reward and accomplishment, I think is a better way to do it.
Yeah. And even I love that, even reward and accomplishment, but also vision and you want to get somewhere, and everyone is excited when something grows and to think that they've had a part of it. So if you keep them on board with the vision, and I know that this is one of the things that I see people struggle with is thinking bigger. And it's but what if we got there? And whenever I think about this, the first person who pops into my mind is Jill. If you're listening, it's always you when it comes to goals and stretch goals. And she is one of those people who understands the power of a stretch goal, because I think every time she puts a stretch goal in place, she's much closer to the stretch goal than she is to the goal. And even something as simple as that, this is where we want to be, but here's where we'd really like to be. And just that is enough to drive your team to go a little bit further and to drive you to go a little bit further. But also, if we can go right back to the beginning of this conversation, if you have that, then all of a sudden you're looking at the numbers going, oh, we're 2 weeks in and, oh, we're not quite where we thought we should be. Instead of being in that pit of despair, your brain can swap to, right, what do we need to do to get back on track?
Yeah. Yeah.
Daniel, what do we need to do to get back on track? They can come to you and ask that question.
That's right. And we can, and there's multiple ways to do it. There's different levers you can pull to achieve that. And I think it's, again, it is that, like you said, it's not sinking into, oh my gosh, okay, here we go again. It's another terrible month. So no, there's ways out of this. There's always ways out of it. How do you get there? How do you do it as an individual, as a team, as a business? How do you get back on track? It's not impossible. Sometimes it's hard, but you learn so much as well. And the sense of accomplishment that you get once you've done it is such an incredible motivator to keep going. It only takes one win. That's why people keep coming. That's why I keep going and playing golf. I only have one good shot and I'll play another 18. That's all it takes. It's an old adage, but it's true. Yeah, one good shot. Oh, that's it. I'm definitely coming back.
Oh, I love it. There you go. Just another new Daniel fact. Plays drums, does volunteer work, runs several businesses, helps business owners scale their business, and plays golf, and is a loving father and husband. Daniel, you and I can talk for literally hours, but I think it's probably a really good time to wrap this up and ask you if you could let the people listening leave with one piece of advice, one thing that they walk away just going, yeah, I can see that if I just did that, or if I thought that, or if I accomplished that, my whole business would change. What advice would you give to people listening?
Oh, wow. I feel like I'm going to give an answer and then I'm going to get off this and go, hang on, I should have said that.
So can we re-record the ending?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like a choose
we
your
have
own
7
adventure.
different alternative endings. Yeah. Answer A, B, C, D, E, F, and D.
Press A for option 1.
That's right. A financial version. Or I think, yeah, that's a really, really good question. I guess I'm just trying to narrow it down. I think more than anything, no word this, you've just got to look at the fact that if you're running a business, you are, A, you're doing something, and B, you're actually successful. If you've been running that business for more than 12 months, you are a statistical anomaly. You've actually beaten the odds, because so many businesses fail within the first, depending on which jurisdiction you look at, first 12 months, first 2 years. If you're still up and going and you're still running, where there's movement, there's hope, and where there's life, there's hope. And so I think it's a case of sometimes you just have to keep showing up. And there are some days you get to work and you're like, I'm just getting through this. And you know what? That's okay. It's not fun, but it's okay. You don't have to turn up to your business every day absolutely crushing all your goals and thinking I'm just flying so high. There are tough times and there are challenges. And not only are they okay, they're good for you. Because as someone that's been through some pretty hairy situations, and a lot of us went through it with COVID, there's nothing more satisfying than looking back and going, oh my gosh, I survived that. This challenge I'm facing now, it's nothing compared to that. But you don't get that feeling unless you've gone through the first challenge. So I think if you have a challenge, if you have some tough times in business, don't feel like you're a failure. Don't feel like it's a lot, it's a loss or your business is a disaster. Every single person goes through it. You will not find a successful business person on this planet that hasn't come close to failing. So don't let it get you down. It can be hard and it can be sometimes a bit depressing, but get good people around you that will encourage you. Talk to other business owners who will tell you, that's nothing. I had this happen. And you'll actually start to realize that, I'm actually doing okay. So much of it is perspective. What I was talking about before about so many people who are just looking down at their own little set of numbers or their own circumstance. Yes, and they can just look up and see the potential, but they look up and see everybody else that's doing exactly the same, that's been through far worse or had much tougher times. Get good people around you to support you. Get other business owners around you that you can talk to, because being a business owner is a very unique journey. I tell people you live in a state of terrified excitement is how I like to describe it. You're constantly terrified, but it's a real thrill, But the highs are higher and the lows are lower. And only other business owners can really relate to it. So just even if it's one or two people that you can just have a bit of a vent. And if it's me, that's fine, and I'll sit there going, yep, no. A, I've been through it. Yep, I can empathize. But B, let me tell you how I got out of it. I think really, I don't know, I hope that answers the question, Sal, but I think it's more of just maybe a bit too much for an existential answer, but don't feel bad if business is tough. That's just normal. It's part of it. You've just got to push through it. You'll enjoy the successes even more when they come. You'll learn a lot and you'll get better as a result. And you never know, you might be able to help someone else further down the track as well.
I love that. And do you know the only caveat, if I had said that I would add is, and it is this, how do you phrase this without sounding bad? But
go for it. Just
don't hang around with the sad sacks who just want to drag you down.
Yeah.
When you're saying have those people around you, have smart, talented people around you.
Yes, that's a very good caveat.
Especially in business, not people who are doing this as a hobby and their life doesn't, their life is not going to change if they have a bad month. If you have other people who are doing this, I'm not going to say as a job, but doing this to survive, the answers they're going to give you or the support they're going to give you or the insight they're going to give you is very different to crowdsourcing an answer on a Facebook group from someone who's not even going through all of this. And if it doesn't work, they got nothing to lose, whereas you've got everything to lose if it doesn't work.
No, that's a great point. That's a very good point. You got to make sure you get the right advice from the right people at the right time. Often as a drummer, one thing I've always been very big on is I listen to drummers and I listen to music that is doing something better than me, so I could try and learn and I could try and get better at my instrument. And that's so many areas of life, business especially. Hang around with people that have got bigger businesses that are making more money, that are selling more money. I guarantee you they will be able to give you a million stories of the struggles they've gone through. But look at where they are now. How do they do it? Business networking groups, all those things are great, but it's really important to have that person or people alongside you that can empathize with you, but give you great advice too. That's a bit of a lifesaver for me on so many occasions.
Daniel Gibney, thank you so much for your story, your advice, your multiple businesses that you've brought to the world, the joy that you bring to so many people drumming and traveling around and pickleball and all of the things that you do.
All the things.
All those things. You are a credit to society, and I am so proud to have you as part of the Retail Academy.
Thanks, Alice. It's great to be on board. I'm enjoying it. It's good.
So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at @TheSelena and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.